Good day, everyone. I think we should start almost on time. It's already 1 minute past, so I want to kick off this session. I'm really happy to be here, happy to see you. We have a very interesting session ahead of us. My name is Marta Rós Karlsdóttir. I'm the Managing Director of Baseload Power Iceland, which is a small geothermal company working with low to medium temperature geothermal wells, producing electricity and hot water and some innovative uses as well. I'm very excited to be in this session because I'm going to learn a lot. I know I've been very curious about how energy storage and load balancing connects with geothermal energy, which is a baseload power. We know its capacity of being a stable, secure energy source, but how can we store it? And how does it benefit our systems? That is the topic for today. We have esteemed 6 speakers today, so we have a full house in this session. I will introduce our speakers one by one, and then we'll end with a panel where I will question I will interrogate my speakers. No, I will give them questions and try to elaborate a little bit more on the topic. So up first is Gunnar Torstensson. He's a 4th-year PhD student or PhD candidate at Columbia University. His research focuses on applying geophysics tools, particularly ultrasound, to probe failure modes of next-generation batteries. He holds an undergraduate degree in geophysics, and he has served as a geothermal engineer in his native Iceland prior to enrolling at Columbia. His talk is on the past, present, and future of energy storage. So welcome to the stage, Gunnar.
Thank you, Marta, for the introduction. Thank you all for attending. It's an honor to be here. So, with the advent of renewables composing an ever-increasing proportion of the resource mix, we eye, possibly on the horizon, finally, an opportunity to forego fossil fuels altogether. The obvious policy motivation for it is because we want to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, because we want to reduce emissions. My perspective, and well, you've all said this before, we need renewables to reduce emissions, but this is a very ineffective approach. And I think US policy for the past 50 years or so has proven that time and time again. A couple of examples. Mr. Jimmy Carter was a progressive US president back in the 70s. He famously installed solar panels on top of the White House. But his successor, Ronald Reagan, kind of switched up the policies and symbolically and unceremoniously tore down the solar panels and most of the policy his predecessor had implemented. Voters will turn out for progressive candidates during times of economic prosperity, but during leaner times, they will invariably fall back on candidates such as Mr. Reagan. And I'm talking about these candidates, but I could just as well be talking about the current 2 candidates for the position of the President of the United States. The Biden administration has resolved this really, really well. And I hope all of us here who are working on these things try to motivate it more from the perspective of energy security. Energy independence should be the ultimate goal. And this is particularly important not for global powerhouses like the US. It's even more important for smaller countries like Iceland. Now, there's a myriad of challenges associated with the energy transition, and I'm not going to touch on all of them. I'll focus on 2 in particular. I know you hear this every day, and you're probably very tired of hearing this, and frankly, I do apologize for mentioning this. but renewables are intermittent. Sun doesn't shine when we need it. The wind doesn't blow when we need it. The second challenge is we want to electrify transportation. Well, I say electrifying transportation, and I guess you can already see my bias creeping through. But, well, I'll wager some of you drove here in an EV. I don't think anybody here drove in a hydrogen-powered vehicle. What these have in common, and is kind of serendipitous for both of them, is that they need kind of to solve the same problem for us to build these out. They require the storage of energy. We need some sort of a buffer between when we generate the electricity and when we need it. Because historically, we've resolved this with fossil fuels, but that's just not on the table anymore. So to evaluate technologies, we base them kind of on the following criteria. We need it to be modular. We need to scale it horizontally all the way from a small rural farm all the way to a city. It needs to be geographically independent because transmission policy worldwide, I'm speaking of Iceland and the US, has utterly failed us. So anytime we need to technology relies on a transmission system build out, it's not going to happen for decades. But we need to act now. We need the grid buffer to be energy dense. And I mean this both in the sense that we don't want it to have a large artificial footprint, and also we want to pack as much punch into as small a volume as possible. Well, this is the obvious one. We want to minimize cost. For the past 200 years, this is how we've evaluated energy storage technologies. And only now, kind of 200 years into the Industrial Revolution, we are imposing a fifth stipulation, and that's sustainability. So this is very abstract. So let me be more specific. Let's evaluate different forms of energy based on Physics 101. Energy cannot be destroyed, it can't be created, it can only be transformed. So the only technology we've had that's not reliant on fossil fuels and is dispatchable, that can generate electricity on demand, is hydro or pumped hydro, depending on your definition. And you can see based on the criteria out there, it kind of, well, it has its problem. It's not the silver bullet we're looking for. I'll set a big asterisk here. I'm giving this talk in Iceland, where this is probably the only country, maybe Norway, where that isn't really like that, but I'm talking globally. The way we've resolved it is with chemical bonds. So we have energy in the form of chemical bonds in hydrocarbons. We generate heat from severing these exothermic reactions, and we convert that to heat, and from there to electricity, and or use it to drive cars, etc. And well, this is really, or was, the silver bullet. I mean, it's modular, it's geographically independent, it's energy dense, it's cheap, but it's not sustainable. We need to replace it with something. And I'm gonna quote Brad Pitt from Moneyball. I don't think we can recreate fossil fuels, but we can recreate it in the aggregate. So sustainable fuels, ammonia, hydrogen, will definitely play a role there for high energy density applications. There are a bunch of others, and I'm taking the liberty here to talk about some other non-applicable. I mean, we can use kinetic energy, we can use thermal energy, but these I hope nobody here is working on it when I say that they kind of suck. Well, now you really see my bias, because I posit the electrochemical energy, or batteries, is the way to move forward with energy storage for medium and low energy density applications. They're modular. I mean, you have them on your phones. you have them in your laptops, you have them in your cars. They're geographically independent. Energy designs, well, sure, for cars, not for currently not for aviation or maritime. Cheap, well, we're getting there. And sustainable, well, depends on how we use them. Now, let me give 2 quick case studies. So, I spoke of inconsistent federal regulation in the US, but California has been very consistent for the past 50 years. For example, their fuel standards have been adopted by other states and ultimately at the federal level. So California has increased its proportion of solar on the grid dramatically in the past, only in the past 15 years. So it now composes 1/3 of electricity on the grid. What you see here is the famous duck curve, where you take the gross load and you subtract solar, what you get from solar. So this is a year old, but what you'll see a lot these days is on a sunny day, the net load on the grid will actually be negative. So if you're using batteries, you get paid for charging your batteries. And I think this has been the case in some parts of Germany as well. So the second would be the Westfjords in northwest Iceland. They are a remote area where there's a single transmission line that kind of traverses a fell. So Murphy's Law is a thing. So invariably at some point during the winter, it will trip. And it means that the region is dependent on costly and unsustainable gasoline generators. So my proposed solution is, instead of building a new transmission line that's buried and it's going to be 10 times expensive and take a long amount of time, is to use modular grid storage to actually resolve this problem. And with that, I thank you for the attention, and you can see here Mr. Carver with the solar panels. Thank you.
Thank you, Gunnar. Very interesting talk. We will be able to dig a little bit deeper into how geothermal fits into this in our panel. But next up is Katrín Ragnarsdóttir. She's a chemical engineer at COWI in Iceland. She first joined Manvit, which is now COWI, after finishing her bachelor studies at the University of Iceland, and later to receive a master's degree in chemical engineering from Politecnico di Milano in 2021. She has been involved in various projects at COWI, some related to geothermal, for example, gas abatement, feasibility studies, and also as a technical advisor for the GRMF in Eastern Africa. So today, she will tell you about a geothermal power to X study conducted by COWI and for GIZ. Welcome, Katrín.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Marta, and very interesting presentation, Gunnar. So I will be telling you a little bit about the study conducted by COWI for a geothermal approach to power to X. So just to start with, because this is recent, Manvit is now COWI. Manvit, which has over 60 years experience in the geothermal industry, joined COWI last year. And COWI is a global consulting firm in engineering, architecture, energy and environmental consulting, and we offer various services in geothermal energy. So a geothermal approach to power to X is a study that was conducted by Manvit and GTN, now COWI, for GIZ in 2022. And it was conducted to analyze the current situation and potential of using geothermal energy as a renewable energy source for producing green hydrogen and its derivatives. So the study focuses on El Salvador, Chile, and Kenya in specific, and the key objectives of the study include to compare the cost of using geothermal opposed to other renewables, identifying co-benefits of geothermal power to X, and assessing the potential for in these specific countries. This was mainly done through desktop research and interviews with experts in the field, geothermal power to X and regulators. And power to X can make geothermal a commodity that can be transported quite easily and perhaps open up locations previously not considered desirable for power generation. So there are at least 2 small-scale geothermal hydrogen projects operational, one in Hellisheiði and one in New Zealand, producing 750 kilowatts and 1.25 megawatts respectively. In Iceland, some power to X plants have been operating in the past. Just to name the obvious example of Carbon Recycling International, which operated a plant next to the geothermal power plant in Svartsengi, using 6 megawatts geothermal power. So hundreds of projects using other renewable, such as solar, wind, and hydropower, are currently being planned. But the focus, based on the findings, there has been significantly less focus on using geothermal. Most geothermal projects are still in the feasibility stage or planning phase, and here I just wanted to show a couple of examples of what has been announced. But looking at the scale, you can see that these are, smaller, or in general smaller than other renewable energy power to X projects. Just to provide a general overview, so power to X is the use of renewable energy to produce any chemical or fuel that can replace existing products made from fossil fuels. So in this figure, the main power to X processes are shown and the potential applications. The main derivatives are hydrogen, methane, e-crude, methanol, ammonia, and most or even all power to X processes begin with the electrolysis of water to make hydrogen. Therefore, for any power to X project to become economical, the cost of hydrogen is crucial. So here, some findings of the study. The estimated cost for hydrogen production is shown for different renewable energies. So the cost is given in intervals for each renewable energy. And this is looking at the short term, so not looking at the technology advancements in electrolysis technology and such. And because of time, I'm not going to go into too much detail. But the findings of the study showed that localized production of hydrogen with current electrolyzer technology and geothermal is potentially the most feasible option, together with onshore wind. With the currently reported capital and operating cost of electrolyzers, the lowest production cost of hydrogen was estimated around $4 to $5 per kilo. So in the long term, obviously, with reductions of capex of electrolyzers might lower around $1 to $2 per kilo, was estimated. And furthermore, the potential of using solid oxide electrolyzers, which require thermal energy, might make the geothermal projects more favorable. So the broken and unbroken lines are different types of electrolyzers, and the cost of hydrogen was based on average electricity generation cost for each renewable energy, given in an IRENA report published in 2020. So just here's a simple comparison of the renewable energy sources and from the results. So obviously, as has been discussed before, the geothermal offers stable operations opposed to wind and solar being variable, and which can affect which type of electrolyzers is optimal to use. And the high capacity factor of geothermal power is what makes it, the baseload power. I will go in a bit later, but a combination of renewable energy sources is something that should be considered. So the main advantage identified in the study, as we've talked about before, is the stable power supply, the grid stability, and high capacity factor. Some other potential co-benefits of using geothermal sources for Power-to-X. The obvious one is the direct use, which can provide heat supply for either the Power-to-X technology itself or the electrolyzers in the future, potentially, yeah. Then there's also the less obvious ones, or going a bit, looking into direct uses or cascade uses. The non-condensable exhaust gas can be used if we're producing methanol, for example, and the non-condensable gases contain hydrogen or carbon dioxide. This can reduce the cost, the least obvious one is the oxygen from the electrolyzers, which is difficult to use in other applications, but could be used in this cascade system, for example, for fish farming. So these are the deep dive cases. They were selected by GIZ, and these are Kenya, El Salvador, and Chile. So Kenya has geothermal capacity growth, which has been one of the fastest in the world. And Chile and El Salvador have favorable conditions, but currently not much electricity produced with geothermal. There is extremely high potential for Chile, and El Salvador heavily depends on fossil fuels and imported electricity, which makes it interesting. So going a bit into the deep dives. Kenya has expansion estimates for renewables, both geothermal and wind and solar. Currently, Kenya has a renewable energy surplus during the night and even sometimes during the day. So opportunities for Power-to-X have been explored and are currently being explored with 3 areas of being identified for high potential at the coast and near the geothermal areas and industrial areas. And one of the greatest opportunities for Power-to-X in Kenya is the production of ammonia for fertilizer production. Most of the current used fertilizer is imported, so this would be a great thing to have it locally produced. There are also, during the study, it also came up that Kenya could become a refilling point for ships in the Indian Ocean using the ammonia. But what was really stressed out during these interviews is that local experts pointed out that it's very important to consider that Power-to-X would increase stress on water availability and reduce available electricity for general use. Also of importance was giving back to the local community, which is why the main focus is on fertilizer production to increase accessibility and affordability. For El Salvador, there are plans to increase the current geothermal capacity. An energy plan is in the works, might have been published. This is a 2-year-old study, so but there are still no concrete strategies for geothermal and the use for production of green hydrogen. There is no industrial production of Power-to-X, and the local market is very small, so export would be of most interest in El Salvador. For Chile, in terms of geothermal energy, there is one power plant which is to be expanded. There are many geothermal areas that are very remote and hard to access, even though there is this massive potential. In South America, Chile is among the most active countries in terms of power to-X and has the goal of expanding its hydrogen production to up to 30 to 50 gigawatts, mostly using wind and solar. The focus of these projects is mainly export of ammonia or methanol. So just to finish, the main recommendations to consider combining different renewable energy sources for power-to-X projects should be considered because a complementary setup can achieve high capacity factors and a reduction in total cost. The construction of new geothermal power plants is usually stepwise and, as we know, takes 10 to 15 years, and it also involves high upfront payments. So having this mix of renewable energy sources can help the power-to-X project start. Also, as always, studying the location of the proposed project should be done. There are many factors that contribute to this, additional factors than just for geothermal energy. And then finally, obviously, to investigate the project cost and related cost and options based on actual energy cost structure. The calculations in the study can assist to define the possible cost for hydrogen product. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katrín. Next up is Gabor Molnar. He's a geothermal engineer and managing director of Arctic Green Engineering Limited. He has been a designer and project manager of several geothermal projects, for example, Hungary's first geothermal power plant. And he is from Hungary, but working with Icelanders for over 16 years. Until last year, he was a part of Manvit, which they had a Hungarian subsidiary. But while a year ago, he and his colleagues joined the Arctic Green Group, still providing engineering services. So Gabor will talk. Gabor's talk will answer the question whether geothermal energy can play the role of load balancing or energy storage. So thank you, Gabor. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. As described, I'm from Arctic Green Engineering. Yes, Manvit joined Tukovi, except the Hungarian subsidiary. We joined the Arctic Green, and then we provide the engineering as an Arctic Green company and for geothermal projects now and in the past. I will talk about now geothermal energy and balancing by geothermal energy. I don't know if you have ever thought about, but geothermal energy is maybe the only one renewable energy what can provide everything. Can provide electricity, can provide heating, cooling by the heat, and also life quality, well-being by bathing and those all kinds of installation what we can see here all around. But how we can balance it? Geothermal is for base load. That's everybody knows and talks about. But what if the demand is not continuous? Then when we have to do some measures or combine different consumptions to balance the production and utilize its baseload capacity. But what if there are other energy sources like solar or wind which are not stable? And then can we use geothermal to adapt to the fluctuations to balance? I will show that. And of course, geothermal by its nature is very much appropriate to balance the costs of long time cost of the energy. Those are the three topics I will talk about now. First, about heating. There is a small system we are developing. When there is this small district heating system of a ton, temperature is not so high, the heating temperature, but the resource temperature is somewhat lower. So that's why we implement heat pumps to boost up a little bit the temperature in the peak seasons. There are other consumers, industries who are willing to join Some have high temperature heating needs, some has low temperature heating needs. We connect them into the cascade system where the wastewater of the high temperature utilizations can still heat up the low temperature consumers, all boosted by heat pumps is needed. How does the low curve seems? The different colors are the different consumers. Dark is the direct utilization of geothermal, light color is the heat pump. So you can see that the capacity of the geothermal resource could be increased very much. The green is the district heating system, so it's 3 megawatts. We can almost double or more than double the heating capacity by connecting the different characteristic users following each other. But still, over summer, there is almost no heat demand. So it's not really using the base load capacity of geothermal energy. How could we utilize it? We could utilize it by connecting other energy types. Another example, it's an industrial user who has cooling demand, heating demand. Both have for technology and for comfort with different temperature, different needs. If we connect them into one system, then over summer, cooling could be provided by absorption chillers. Of course, the technological heat demand is continuous. Both heating and cooling demand is continuous over the year, but the comfort is peaking over winter, the cooling is over summer. So by connecting into one system, the energy demand is quite balanced, almost 100%. The cooling demand cannot be fully provided by the same system because of the efficiency of absorption chillers. So some conventional cooling solution is necessary to still to provide the peak. But you can see in this curve, it's totally different from the previous one. The cooling can utilize the base load capacity of geothermal. What could be even better, another example, if you build a geothermal power plant and use the waste heat of the power plant for heating, greenhouse heating, a district heating system, secondary with heat pumps, using more the heat. But in most cases, the waste heat of the power plant is limited by temperature and limited by its amount. So what could we do if the geothermal power plant is controllable? We can reuse somewhat the capacity of the geothermal power plant over the coldest days of the winter. And then we can supply much higher energy amount for the heating systems temporarily when it's needed. You can see the dark blue line is the capacity of the electricity production. It's a 4 or 5 megawatt power plant. Normally, without this controlling, the waste heat capacity could be 10, 15 megawatts thermal. It could be supplied for any kind of heating systems. But with this controlling, if we reduce the capacity over winter, we can supply more than 40 megawatts heating system. Obviously, the produced electricity amount is a little bit lower, but additional benefit is that we can supply a very high amount of heating system, both for greenhouses or heating systems, space heating systems. I will maybe skip that to save time. There was a project that we have designed where there were almost all the Lindau diagram is planned to be built. Unfortunately, that was never executed due to some financial issues. But there were a project when hotels and spa, agriculture, all kinds of fish farms, they were planned. And the plan was to drill different wells for different reservoirs, also shallow wells for cooling with a geothermal power plant. And that could have been really a very good efficiency utilization of the geothermal resource. We will not go into those details. Let's talk about the electricity production. I will talk about the binary production, focusing mainly for the European, Central European conditions where steam turbine or flash are rarely applicable. Conventional binary cycles, ORC plants, tailor-made design, that's in the lower right corner, that's very, very commonly used. Other option is the small modular system. Marta probably knows it better, which can adapt very well to the needs of the heating system for small installations, but they are very well controllable. I will get back to it later. They can be very well installed in addition to any geothermal heating system or designed together with a geothermal heating system. How about geothermal electricity production? It's a baseload power. Yeah, that's true. It has continuous operation 24/7 all around the year. It's not dependent on the weather changes. It requires some minor maintenance, everybody knows, so it's a very, very stable and very reliable electricity source. But if we go into the details, are these really true? Yeah, it can operate continuously except the maintenance, but is it really weather dependent? More or less, yes, but if the cooling is not provided directly by cold water, but there are some air cooling, and then, of course, the temperature of the air, the ambient temperature, has some effect of the efficiency of the power plant. When the weather is warm, then, it's on the next slide, in summer, when the weather is warm, then there is a decrease of the efficiency of the power plant. Of course, also the cooling system requires higher energy amounts to operate. So there is some small weather dependency in the geothermal electricity production as well. If we see a daily distribution, picture is a little bit more equal. So there are minor differences overnight, over the day when the sun is shining, warm is weather. There is some small decrease, but it's quite constant. So of course, there is difference between a winter day and the summer day. It looks like if we compare to other renewables. This is a energy mix of Hungary as an example. The blue line is the energy demand of the country. The reddish orange is the baseload power, like nuclear and other baseload powers. Gray are the fossil fuels. And the yellow is the photovoltaic. There are huge capacity installed in Hungary in the last 5 years or 10 years. And over summer, in a sunny day, there is an overproduction. The electricity price could be even negative on those days. And that's an issue that needs to be solved by storage or by balancing energy. How does this curve look like if we add geothermal capacity? A few hundred megawatts, not a huge addition. If you have good eyes, then maybe you can see that the green line is somewhat thinner in the midday, but that's minor. So really, it works like a base load. Add capacity to the orange. So as its nature, it's not really balancing the energy. But there is an idea. There are more and more talks about it. That the geothermal power plant system consists of two parts. There is the brine system, harvesting, circulating the brine, and there is the power plant. What if we turn off the power plant on the midday and keep the brine circulation and use the energy for cooling, for example, with absorption, or just have it as a consumer? Then we can consume the electricity produced by solar, for example. We can use it for cooling and not producing, of course. That's a balancing. If it's a good solution, environmental friendly solution, well, I'm not sure. That's kind of a firefighting, but still could be a solution. And if the energy price is negative, it can even generate some profit. The power plant can adopt, so it can be designed to be controllable. Increases the capex somewhat, but yeah, still it's a solution. And I have two very interesting curves about the costs, but my time is over, so yeah, I will just tell those whoever is interested about them. Okay, thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabor. We will have time later to discuss the cost curves. So next up is Sheila Didier-Paul, or Sheila. Sheila is the R&D manager for surface corrosion and interface engineering at TWI in Cambridge, UK. He has over 20 years research and training experience in materials, coatings, and corrosion, with 100+ publications. He has a PhD in material science from the University of Cambridge and is a chartered engineer and a fellow of the Institute of Materials in the UK. He's currently the vice chair of the European Federation of Corrosion, work package 9. So, Sheila, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Martha. That introduction made me feel quite important and quite serious, but I'm not. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a topic that Gunnar covered a little bit, where he talked about that thermal energy storage is not quite as good as we would want it to be. So I'm going to highlight a little bit on what we can do to make it a bit better. So this is part of a European project called GeoSmart, funded by the Horizon 2020 program. And I'm going to introduce the project a little bit as well. So I'm from Cambridge in the UK. The TWI headquarters are in nice countryside, about 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers south of the nice Cambridge city center. So in the project, when we started a few years back, over 4 years ago now, we started to look at the limited flexibility of geothermal. And there were some scaling issues in the geothermal plants. And we have three partners actually, but two actively involved in the power plant industry. So one from Kızıldere, Zorlu Energy in Turkey, and the other part of Vulcan Group in Germany. Not too far from Karlsruhe, in a place called Ensheim. They've got a plant there. So we thought maybe we could look at the energy storage part of it to increase the flexibility of geothermal plants. And then also look at the WRC system with adiabatic cooling, and maybe look at scaling reduction systems. So it's quite a big project. And we have got over almost 19 partners, including operators, RTOs, SMEs, and others. And a few from Iceland. You can see there are quite a few from Iceland. And in terms of the plant itself, I said we've got a couple. One in Turkey, Zorlu Energy, and the other one in Ensheim, part of the Vulcan Group. And that's the picture of the partners that attended our first meeting. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about phase change materials, which are used for thermal energy storage. One of the simplest known phase change material is water, and it has been used for a long time in terms of using the latent heat for energy storage or energy conversion rather. Typically in these kind of phase change modules, what will happen is when you have the hot fluid, in this case could be geothermal fluid, you use the heat to then convert a phase change material or a material. It could be salt, it could be some other fluid, which can undergo phase change within the temperature range you're working on. And it uses the energy and stores it as latent heat, so maybe converting from solid to liquid and stays liquid for a bit. And when you need it, you can then pass a cooling fluid, could be water, could be something else, to then extract the heat, and you can take the latent heat out of that phase change material and use it elsewhere. The problem with this is the selection of phase change material. You need to know exactly the temperature range and a few other things to find the right phase change material. And the other issue is a lot of phase change materials, they do have high corrosivity. So construction materials, they tend to degrade quite easily in a lot of these phase change materials. So when we started this project, we started to look at literature and what people have done and partners within the consortium did in this area. And we decided on, let's start with one of the most commonly, or the one that we thought would be really good one because of very high melting enthalpy. And the temperature range we were looking at typically for these systems were between 120 to 130, 140. So that meant that maybe this is something that we could use. So I've listed some of the things that one needs to look at: operating temperature, melt enthalpy, diffusivity, cycling stability, which is quite an important, because if you're cycling through several hundreds and thousands of cycles, that becomes quite an important one. Vapor pressure, health and safety related toxicity, and cost is always important. And a few other things which I haven't quite noted, because we realized in some cases when we actually started with the adipic acid, we found some challenges which we didn't consider at the start. Okay, so this work was done by my colleague Sebastian from Fraunhofer in Germany. And they started to look at the aging issues with the adipic acid. So the team carried out 1,000 hours of testing in air and argon. And what they found is there is quite a bit of degradation that is happening due to these cycling processes. And what we found that after 1,000 hours of cycling, be it in air or argon, we thought that there will be a significant difference between the two. But what we found that you're typically seeing about maybe 10% reduction in terms of its enthalpy. So what that means is over the years, the system would slowly degrade, and the thermal energy storage capacity would also decrease by about 10% or so within the 1,000 hours that we did. And the other thing we wanted to also understand is whether the commonly used materials of construction could work in this kind of phase change material. So what we did is we took 3 of the most commonly used construction material, aluminium, carbon steel SA179, a specific grade of carbon steel. And we wanted to also check one of the commonly used stainless steel 316L to see if that would also work. We know that is a lot more expensive than some of the others. So what we did is we took small coupons of these materials, and tested them in the molten adipic acid at 165 C for about a week or so. Took the samples out, washed, cleaned, photographed, and followed what we call the ASTM G1 cycle. So what that actually means is you take your sample out, you go through inhibited acid cleaning, and you weigh the sample before and after, and based on that, and assuming a general corrosion, you find out the corrosion rate from first principles. So what we found that in carbon steel we were very easily able to determine that there was some tarnishing or corrosion processes happening which changed the color of or appearance of the surface. In case of aluminium, there was some difference. In stainless steel 316L, we couldn't really find much, and there was no localized corrosion as well. And as I said, we use the ASTM G1 cycle. So you weigh your sample before and after and go through cleaning cycles and use the equation there. It's basically first principle determination based on surface area and mass. And we calculated the corrosion rate. And what we found is that in case of carbon steel, the corrosion rate was quite high. And you can see that the numbers are quite high there, a few millimeters, about 5.6 or 6 millimeters or so. And in case of 316L and aluminum, they were more manageable. So when we looked at the numbers in a bit more detail calculated, as I said, it's over 5.5 millimeters per year. And that was unrealistic. So a plant cannot operate when you have corrosion rates that high. Aluminum was pretty good, and 316L we knew would most likely be quite a good one. But due to cost-related issue, we couldn't possibly use that kind of material for this plant. So we had to go back to the drawing board and start again. We found another supplier, Dufrit in Germany, who said, okay, do you want to use this particular system? They have used it before, and they think that might be the solution we are looking for. Although the melt enthalpy is a bit lower than adipic acid, we thought, okay, we don't have any other options, so let's go for that one. And this time we started to look at other materials as well, not just 179 SA, SA516, 106, and we started to change the surface conditions to see whether that makes any difference. So the top pictures are the ones of the samples before. The bottom ones are after testing. Again, this is tested at 165 C in molten high-tech salt. It's a nitrate nitrite mixture, the composition given in the brackets there. And we can see that in some cases, we can clearly see some difference in the coloration, which indicates some changes, possibly corrosion. And we calculated the corrosion rate. And you can see there that in case of the carbon steel 179, we found that maybe this is acceptable. This is still manageable in terms of the corrosion rate for the plant itself. And so in the real plant, what we are using the SA179 tube with aluminum 1050 fins. And that system seems to be, in the pilot plant, that system seems to work. The bigger plant would be installed in Kızıldere in Turkey in end of August, around the end of August, early September. So to conclude, we started with a bit of an unknown in terms of which type of PCM to use in this particular application. And then we figured out through trial and error, there was a lot of learning to be done. We started with one system, we realized that doesn't quite work. We went back to the drawing board, found another system, and that seemed to work. So we are going to use the SA179 with a nitrite mixture, high-tech salt, and 1050 aluminium fins for the PCM storage. So this is kind of the tubes which have the aluminium fins in them. And for people who are thinking of other systems where they want even lower corrosion rate and they have deep pockets, possibly 316L might be an option. So that's all for my talk. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Sheila. Our fifth speaker is Dirk Schär. Dirk holds a PhD in chemistry from Georg August University of Göttingen, Germany. He has a 27-year-long track record with Sasol Chemicals in different customer service, market development, and marketing roles. Currently, he is responsible for the marketing and sales of Sasol's high-performance cobalt Fischer-Tropsch catalyst, enabling Sasol's proven Fischer-Tropsch technology, as well as alternative microchannel and fixed bed technologies. Further to this, he is the co-head of the Kerosene Catalyst Development Consortium. Finding sustainable solutions together with his customers was always one of his major goals. It brings him in the perfect position to drive the conversion of the fuels and the chemical industry into a carbon-free future from a catalyst point of view. So today his talk is titled Application of Fischer-Tropsch Technology at a Scale for Sustainable Fuels and Chemical Production. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Marta, for the kind words, and also thanks to IGC for the invitation that I can talk here on behalf of Sasol and the Kerosene Consortium. I need to rush a little bit through my presentation because it's only 10 minutes. But the good thing is that Gunnar, as well as Catherine, did lay the foundation for my presentation. So I'm going back to the Power to X area, I've already heard something about. Let me skip the first two slides. You can read through what Sasol is doing later on. That's not so important. Let me stick with this third slide. So what Gunnar said is it's very important that we find ways to store the energy that we are producing on a sustainable from sustainable sources. And one area, or the other area that we have to look into is that we find the right energy storage for the application that we are looking for. And one application that is hard to electrolyze is the aviation industry. So this aviation industry is looking desperately for sustainable solutions of sustainable aviation fuels as one option. And on that slide, you see different options, and I will not go into detail with all these different options. What I would like to highlight is just this last row here. This gives you the difference between the cost of the conventional fuel and the estimated cost for your alternative products. And as you can see, these are very high numbers. So for the far right, the power to X area, some literatures are talking about figures of 3 to 5. Others are even talking about 6, 7, 8. So it's an area where you have very high cost to produce that kind of fuels. I will focus now within my presentation to the last two slides, two columns here. But as said, my focus is on how can we bring down that cost? What can we do to do that? And then bridge this to the geothermal area. Just a little bit about Sasol and why Fischer-Tropsch is so of interest. So the Fischer-Tropsch technology can be made on different feedstocks. You only need the so-called syngas. The syngas is a combination of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. And as long as you have the syngas, you can do Fischer-Tropsch. So the feedstock for the Fischer-Tropsch is absolutely agnostic, feedstock agnostic. So we can start from coal or gas, which is the traditional way, or you can also start now with carbon captured CO2, or you can start with bio feedstocks or whatever. Sasol has a long experience in that area, knows everything about Fischer-Tropsch. We are active for more than 70 years in that area. And for this reason, we think that we are well positioned to bring this technology into the future. Karen did already talk about the electrolyzer route, that you start with the green energy. You need an electrolyzer, convert this into hydrogen, and then further process this on. What we also need then is the carbon source, which could come from a direct air capture source, like many of us have seen yesterday in practice at Climeworks. Then you need a reverse water gas shift, and then you have your first step for syngas. Alternatively, and that was is the other option, is you start, as said, from biomass or waste and do a direct gasification. That has an advantage that you avoid the reverse water gas shift, at least partly, because you still need some hydrogen mostly to fix up the combination of the carbon monoxide to the hydrogen to a factor of 1 to 2. And then you need to decide what you want to do. Do you want to get a kerosene product? Then your best way is to choose a Fischer-Tropsch low temperature process and a cobalt catalyst. Where we are coming from at the moment is that there are catalysts out there, also from Sasol. They can produce at the moment Fischer-Tropsch crude or E-crude, like Kathleen also mentioned it earlier. That can be converted in up to 70% into your target molecule kerosene. What we have done now within the kerosene project is setting us a new target. We want to get more efficient to produce more kerosene and want to get above 80%. This has, and I will come back to that, a lot of advantages to your whole process. We are doing this within a big consortium together with universities because it sounds like a small step from 70 to 80, but it's still in chemistry, it's still a big change. We are working together with 4 institutional partners in South Africa and in Germany. And we have 2 industrial partners, Sasol and a startup in Germany, Neratec, which has modularized Fischer-Tropsch plants. Was highly recognized. So this is the opening ceremony, still in Corona times. As you can see, there is our Chancellor Scholz and President Ramaphosa standing next to him where they did the opening ceremony. And it's also funded with a lot of German tax money. In the consortium, working in different work packages, also will not go into too much detail with that. What we have achieved up to now with the combination of the know-how and technologies of the universities. So they have fancy equipment that we as an industry would never have the money to invest in. But that helps us to get a better view on what the catalyst is really doing in action. So with them and with their know-how and their input into our development program, we managed to develop a catalyst already on town scale that gives us an e-crude that looks like we can achieve these 80%. So that's the step that we are now busy with to really prove these theory in a practical way, and hope that we can get to these 80% also in practice soon. This is the theory. That's what we would love to do. How can we put this in action? And that's coming now on the next slide. Within Europe, there are at the moment 45 projects ongoing. 25 of them are even bigger projects that want to produce sustainable aviation fuels. We as Sasol are involved in several of them, just to name two here. Let's start with the bottom one. It's a project from Arcadia e-fuels in Denmark. Arcadia wants to build a power-to-liquid plant of 20,000 barrels per day, which is roughly 90,000 tons of product. And it's really a power-to-liquid process. The CO2 source is as far as I know, a biogenic one. And another one is the Uniper project, Skyfuels H2 in Canada. Thanks. And this project is a combination of biogas and electrolyzer. So let's combine that with geothermal. So why is geothermal here something that comes into the play? And as we heard several times now, geothermal energy is rather stable. And the problem for us on the chemical side is our processes are very sensitive to fluctuation. So the Fischer-Tropsch itself, you can run efficiently between 50 and 100%. If it's below that, you can't really run the plant. So you have to store your energy somehow. And that's the challenge. You lose energy, you have expensive batteries you put in place, you need hydrogen storage or whatever, which is a big challenge and also a big cost factor. And for this reason, and finally also for as me as a catalyst guy, it's also meaning a lot of stress for your catalyst when it's up and down and more and less. And so you have a big impact on the catalyst itself as well. So combining these two, geothermal energy with the Fischer-Tropsch or the power-to-X process, enables you to have a stable operation. You have less stress to your whole catalyst and also whole process. And you lower significantly your investment costs. And that's what I wanted to bring back. So you don't have to build all the storage facilities for these interim products. You can scale down. Your efficiency gets higher. And for this reason, it's a perfect combination. And then even if you look for direct air capture, this combination with geothermal is also a perfect one. To conclude, we as Sasol are one of the experts in Fischer-Tropsch with 70 years experience in Fischer-Tropsch. We are active in not only the catalyst, but we're also licensing our technology. So we're looking for projects. On the catalyst side, we are not only serving our own technology, we're also offering this to other technology providers. We have, and that could be also beneficial when you have to prove something. We have a very huge pilot facility, which is much bigger than some of the commercial plants that are currently put out. So we can produce 300 barrels per day in that pilot facility. And this all together, we hope that we can lay the ground to make sustainable aviation fuels on a sustainable but also economically feasible basis in future. And with this, I'm thanking you for your time. Without that slide, don't forget that slide, with all the support we have from the consortium. And I'm not reading to you all the names. You can see it's a very big consortium, and I'm thankful for the contribution of everyone and for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Now to our last speaker of this session, Helga Dögg Flossadóttir. She is the CEO and co-founder of Atmonia. She has a PhD in physical chemistry from the University of Iceland since 2011. following which she worked at the Innovation Center Iceland as a project leader in environmental monitoring of pollutants around the industry in Iceland, and the head of R&D within the Chemical Analysis Department. During this employment, she had the opportunity to initiate research and development projects, one of which led to the foundations of ammonia in 2016, where Helga took the CEO role. Helga's talk will be on reinventing the nitrogen economy. Welcome, Helga.
I was hoping I could use one of those. Is that possible? I think so. Can I have? Does it work out? No. Not yet. Not working? Okay. Great. Wonderful. So, we at Ammonia, our goal is to reinvent the nitrogen economy with a versatile and distributed ammonia production, which is applicable with sustainable and intermittent energy sources. Just to recap a bit on how ammonia is produced today, because maybe not all of you are familiar with this. This is the Haber-Bosch process. It takes in gas, makes carbon reforming to produce hydrogen, and releases a lot of CO2. The hydrogen is then reacted with nitrogen at high temperature, high pressure to produce ammonia. This is done at a significantly large industrial scale, and these operations have to be continuous 24 hours, 365 days a year. Now, there are many ways in which this is being developed further in order to make the ammonia production more sustainable, one of which is just capturing the CO2, creating blue ammonia with CCU technology. But it doesn't really solve the intermittency. It's still operating 100% of the time. Now, another way is just to produce green ammonia with an electrochemical or with electrolyzers. Again, is this a laser? The continuity of the Haber-Bosch process itself remains. It needs to operate continuously. It's really difficult to turn something off that's 350 degrees and 150 bar. Our process simplifies it significantly. This is, of course, a highly simplified picture, but it's an electrolyzer in an aqueous solution that produces ammonia with potential, with a very specific and engineered catalyst on the cathode. This is operating at room temperature and pressure, and that means that we can operate when the electricity is available and then just turn it off. Our next question was then, like, how does it look in life cycle assessment? And My Climate is a Swiss company. They provided a report to us where they compared our process with Haber-Bosch world average and Haber-Bosch best quarter. And you can see that the Haber-Bosch process is producing about 2.2 tons of ammonium per ton, of carbon dioxide per ton of ammonium produced. If our process, our electrochemical or electrolysis of nitrogen to produce ammonia was operated on the European electricity grid, the emissions from the grid itself would cause the cradle-to-grave CO2 emissions from our process to be significantly larger than the Haber-Bosch world average. And this does apply to all electrolyzers. Just to remind you of that. It's not just ours, it's just whenever you're using electricity, and claiming to be sustainable, that electricity needs to be sustainable in order for the process to be as well. And that's quite clear here, because if we were to use renewable electricity, we can save almost 2 tons of CO2 per ton of ammonia produced. Now, and our vision for our process is then to have a containerized process in a 40-foot container to have an annual production capacity of 150 tons ammonia. That's tiny. That's on the micro scale compared to Haber-Bosch. Haber-Bosch is producing 30 or 100 tons per day, and we are aiming to go very, very small. A part of that is the versatility and a completely different business model. And that's why we are entering a completely different market. Now, with room temperature and pressure, we can produce whenever the electricity is available. As soon as we can take the ammonium that we produce and turn it into, like separate and compress and turn it into a liquid hydrous ammonium, the demand will increase from the 200 million tons per year as it is today to about 600 million tons because, as is anticipated, because of the fuel perspective of ammonia. We have a significantly low capex. This way we can save 3% and even more of global CO2 productions, provided that our process is taken up globally, of course. And the trick to this is using otherwise curtailed energy that's not being used today. And we are developing this process for liquid and hydrous ammonium production in collaboration with a company in Germany. And we're really, really excited about that. Now, how does this relate to geothermal electricity? It's a fairly stable baseload production, and that was the question that I had before this conference. And we've been thinking about this also because we are developing this process in Iceland, and Iceland just happens to have a significantly stable resource of electricity. And we're completely going for the fluctuations. Now, there was a report in April this year published about the future of electricity production in Iceland, and one of the chapters, I know this is in Iceland, but they are suggesting studies towards making geothermal more flexible. Now, while the world is fighting the problem of intermittent electricity production, in Iceland, we just happen to have the problem of too stable electricity production. And this is, and then I went to Orkustofnun online, collected a lot of data. That's all open source. I'm really lucky, I'm happy with that. And I could see that in 22, Iceland produced 20,000 gigawatt hours of electricity. This is the total electricity produced. And then in the same year, we consumed about 19,000 gigawatt hours. So there's a bit more than 1,000 gigawatt hours that are lost somewhere. I mean, there's a lot of losses on the way, but there's also another loss, which is the fluctuations in energy consumption in Iceland. You can see that, well, we have the reducible electricity. This is the priority to a great extent, Icelandic homes. And then we have the industry, which is not fluctuating at all. And the yellow is the sum. And now I just made the very rough assumption, and I know life is much more complicated than this, that for every 24-hour window, we would need to have a base load available in Iceland that is equal to the peak maximum for that 24-hour window. I've had some discussions and learned, yes, we can probably get some of the peak, create that availability with hydro, create more flexibility, and that's great. But this is not going to play a major role in those rough calculations that I have. Now, it looks like this for the whole year. And the rest, which is the green, which is the electricity that is available, but no one really wants to use because we don't have a process to use it. It's 668 gigawatt hours per year. And 4% of this almost 19,000 gigawatt hours that we use. That's a significant number. So what does it mean? 668 gigawatt hours with our process, if we capture 100% of it, which of course is not entirely realistic, we could produce 55,500 tons approximately of ammonia every year. In Iceland, we import 10,000 tons of nitrogen every year for fertilizer, so it's even more than we actually need as fertilizer. And then we have the section of maritime transportation. And if we take all of the oil that we use today for maritime transportation and recalculate that into energy equivalents of ammonia, that would be about 369,000 tons of ammonia every year. And that's much bigger than the 55,000 that we can produce with the available electricity. And then if we segment that into the boats that could potentially the fastest take up ammonia, because there's a lot of problems with taking up ammonia as fuel. And these would be the smallest vessels that travel the shortest distances. And that's because they have lesser problems with increasing the volume of the fuel by 3. And they would need about 39,600 tons a year. So this is an entirely realistic approach to use the fluctuating consumption of electricity and the above baseload, or just the baseload electricity that is already being produced and provided in some way to produce a chemical that's really in demand in Iceland. We need to import all of the ammonia that we use in this country. But where are we at? We are an early stage company. We aim to have our first container on site in 2029. And from there on, there's a lot of development ongoing and will be needed for the next 5 years. And this is also 2930 is also the year that is being predicted as the year where ammonia starts really taking place, like a real segment of the maritime transportation. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have concluded the presentations, and I would like to invite all the speakers up on stage to have one round of questions just to finish off the session. I think we all have many questions after these very varied talks showing different solutions for either energy storage or power to X. So from utilizing electricity either from entire power plants to surplus energy for storing energy in terms of power to X, and also heat storage, which is also really important and relevant to geothermal energy and heat demand. So I just want to give you one question for the panel. I want to hear your solutions that you have been talking about today, or your suggestions for the future. How long time do we need to implement those in a sustainable, and economically viable way? When can they actually be commercial for us to use to tackle climate change, to tackle the energy transition, and so on? And what do you need actually for your projects to become economically viable and scaled up and used across the world? It's maybe a big question, but I think everybody is interested to hear how far the technologies have come today, and when will we see those technologies supporting our future energy systems. Anybody brave who wants to start? Or should I pick one? Helga.
Well, I can start.
Thank you.
Here at this end. Well, we need 5 years before we enter market, and then it will take probably 5 more to just get really into scale. And we need money. There's not sufficient investment globally into long-term deep tech development. So that's, yeah.
Thank you, Helga. And Gunnar?
Speaking to kind of my domain, which I guess currently is batteries, I will echo what Helga just said, that I think funding is paramount, and we're currently, I think, hitting an inflection point with a lot of these technologies which have been building up since the early noughts, and it just takes it takes on the order of decades to commercialize new technology. So in our domain, we're seeing a lot of technologies we have been working on for 20 years. We're finally seeing them become commercially viable now. So, to Helga's point, it's just you're always. Fortunately, we're not looking at fusion, which is always 50 years ahead. We're 5 years.
5 years. Thank you. Sheila.
Thanks, Gunnar. The thermal energy storage is already used in many plants. The major challenge or problem is that the heat source needs to be nearby. So it cannot be a universal solution, but we have to use whatever resources available, and not focus on just one energy source or one type of storage. I think we have to use all of the available ones and prudently try and select the ones that are suitable for a given location, country, or otherwise. So I think, that will be my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mainly talked about geothermal, so I think what's missing there is just the energy. Just need more energy to start doing stuff. At least here in Iceland, there's not much available energy at the moment. So there's definitely opportunities there to start doing things right away. But after these talks here, I think the main part is, or what needs to be focused on is, what do we want to focus on? Where do the best opportunities lie? I think, that's.
Thank you. So energy investments are always long-term investments. We're thinking about years of developments and decades of operation. And the world is changing always, and changing much faster than we develop, and then we have to adopt. And what is good that there are more and more solutions in the palette, what we can pick and combine into complex system. And I think that's the tool, to think about complex system, and we should always adopt to the new challenges, to the new situations. And those solutions, what we heard today, are helps a lot to be adoptable systems. Yeah.
On our side, Fischer-Tropsch is already happening. So Power-to-X plants are already built at a much smaller scale. So that needs to be upscaled, and there also the financial constraints is one thing. On the other side, if you look to aviation, the EU and also a lot of other countries has put their blending rates into laws. The RED II perspective, and so there is the foundation that now allows to move ahead and get the money and get things going. And then I would like to echo what you said. Then you need to look in what do you want to do? What problem do you want to solve at the end? Is it a chemical problem where you need then methanol and MTO technology? Is it sustainable flying? Is it hydrogen that you need for something else? So and then you need to balance out your energy availability with the requirements at the end, and that's the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, duly noted. I think we all have realized that there's no single solution, whether it's in energy production or whether it's in your project. So multiple solutions available, and you can definitely tailor-make them to fit the projects that they're connected to. But again, I want to maybe deepen a little bit the discussion on the connection between geothermal energy, whether it's heat or electricity, to these kind of technologies. What are the benefits of geothermal in terms of coupling it with these types of technologies, and what are the main challenges? So if I could start again with you, Helga.
There are more.
Yeah.
That's thank you. I think the benefit is really that there is a significant stable base load, and then there are through fluctuations in use, that means that there is a demand for electricity. And I think what we can see is also that there's significant interest here in Iceland at least, and I'd like to look forward and worldwide with regards to stabilizing that. And really creating a structure where we do have a process like close to source or close to the users. It really depends, and it will be an interesting discussion to have along the road.
I think we're all aware of how amazing geothermal is as an energy source. My kind of concern is that it's such a niche player worldwide. It's only 0.3% of local electricity production. If you're going to design and develop technologies that are downstream from it or contingent on it, and we're talking about funding is limited, and we need to prioritize what we're going to do to accelerate the energy transition. I think first and foremost we need to be scaling up geothermal, and that will make it exponentially easier to adopt these other dependent technologies.
As I said before, the main limitation of thermal energy storage is the proximity to a heat source. So one can probably have thermal energy storage close to a geothermal plant where we talked about the base load, and if you have sort of less demand, then you can divert some of your the unused heat, if you like, for thermal energy storage, and when you have peak demand, you can use that. But this can't be a long-term storage solution because your system would start cooling down, and that won't be useful. So as I said, you need to have multiple ways in which the energy can be stored, not just one. So that's the key here.
Yeah, and Katrin, I know you spoke about different projects in different countries, and you talk about the remoteness of some geothermal power plants. What is your advice? How can we utilize the resource in a remote location? And then what do you think is the best option to utilize that energy that may not be transported away from the site?
I think, like I said in the presentation, using Power-to-X can make geothermal a commodity. So obviously, we need to make those areas accessible in a way. To operate the power plant, we need people, and but this way of combining these two, we have more flexibility of not having to connect it to a larger grid or something like that. So I think that would be like a large opportunity for geothermal in remote areas, combining it with Power-to-X. I already talked about the opportunities, as we all discussed, the stable load and everything. So I think, but the challenges are just going to be the same challenges as for any geothermal power plant. It's the risks associated with both funding and the drilling and all of that. So
And Gabor, you talked a little bit about fluctuating geothermal power plants. I know that many of us have that idea and many concerns also on the equipment and the cycling of temperatures and so on. Do you think that this is a good way to harness geothermal, is to allow for these fluctuations, thinking about the well structures and thinking about the equipment on the surface?
Well, but the benefit of geothermal that it's a vast amount of energy source, and it's available, and we can use it as we want. So it's not, or just slightly depends on external factors like weather, so we can control it. And there are several ways how we control it. If it's good for the equipment, yes, for sure. Equipment can be engineered to be adaptable. Still, geothermal as because of the continuous availability, best to use for base load. But because it has the option to be controlled, that's something we could do, and we could design the system such to allow control. The lifetime and the financial profitability is a question we need to evaluate. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I think the other aspect is, as we already said, some of the geothermal energy is in countries where there's no constant energy supply right now. So I think for a lot of projects, we have to stand back for the time being and wait that the countries are getting a reliable energy source, which is also true for South Africa, the country where Sasol is coming from. And only when you have secured that, then you can look into what do I do with the excess of the energy. I think that's one of the major challenges that we are all in. But the other thing is also that we need more investment into geothermal energy. There's a huge resource. I really love it. It's the first time that I'm at a geothermal conference, and I can see that there's a lot of potential. Now we need to motivate the world to invest into these technology and not get away from these few percentages to a higher utilization rate of these very sustainable and stable energy. And then we can use it for our project.
Thank you so much. I think these were very good final words for a session. Lunch is coming up. I think people are hungry. Please contact our speakers during lunch if you have any questions. I think they will be more than happy to have dialogues and answer everything that you have in mind. So thank you so much for this great audience. Thank you to our esteemed speakers, and have a great lunch.